Today on I Got Back Up, I'm joined by Nathalie McGloin. Nathalie is the only female tetraplegic racing driver in the world, founder of Spinal Track and president of the FIA Disability and Accessibility Commission. At the age of 16, Nathalie was in a car crash and was left paralysed from the waist down. From wheelchair rugby, motorsports racing, and presenting the third place trophy on the podium at the British Grand Prix, we navigate through teenage years, university, self-discovery, and beyond. So when you hear the phrase "I got back up," how does it make you think and feel?
I think obviously having got back up myself from breaking my neck, it kind of makes me feel quite inspired because I think like we all fall down in life, and I've fallen down a lot, um, and I think that you're not constantly up, so you kind of get back up from a lot of things. And I suppose some people's kind of journey on getting back up is more arduous than others. But I think it's a really important kind of thing to bear in mind because I do talk about, because I do quite a lot of public speaking, about failure not being a weakness and how it's a tool to make us stronger. And I suppose that getting back up is all part of that. So, having broken my neck at kind of 16 years old, I learned how to get back up at quite a young age. And I would argue that I'm still getting back up from that kind of period because when you have like a life changing injury, people often kind of ask about the time when you kind of got over it. And I think the honest answer is you never get over it. You just learn how to cope with it better with each kind of day that passes and each kind of period of your life that you've achieved something or that you've kind of overcome something. So yeah, for me, I think it's quite a constant in my life, kind of getting back up.
I think that's actually a really valid point because I think it's anything in life. We are constantly evolving, changing, learning, and healing from things. And we aren't ever constantly up every single minute of every single day. And I think that's actually a really important point to make because I think people think that the only way to heal, the only way to be better, let's say in inverted commas, is to always be happy, always be positive, always be up. But actually it's learning that from our weaknesses and maybe even our dark sorry, not even maybe, from our darkest places, that we learn a lot and we need that always to actually heal.
Mhm. Yeah, I think like when people find out about kind of how I was injured and stuff, there's a lot of that kind of rhetoric of, oh, I couldn't do it. If that happened to me, I, and it's a kind of backhanded compliment in one way because it's like, oh, your life seems really bad. Like, I don't think I could cope with that. And then on the other hand, it's like, people thinking or saying that they think that I'm strong. But I think, that classic, I couldn't do it, I couldn't cope with that. No one knows how they will cope with life changing injury or disability or chronic illness until it happens to them. Because I think most of us have a fire inside of us that we can either access or something accesses it for us. And it's our kind of survival. And it's something that kind of drives us and gives us the energy to cope with stuff. So yeah, I think that that's kind of goes hand in hand with kind of getting back up, I think.
I think we all have that fire inside us. We just don't all ignite it. And sometimes it is because we're pushed to do it. So we're pushed into these life changing events. And those are the things that make us realize. But the line, wow, I couldn't do that, I've heard it before. And I think everyone, I wouldn't want people to go into these positions, but if people were in them, they could do them. I think as human beings, we don't realize our own strength until it's one of the only things we've got left at that time.
That's such a valid point. I think that yeah, we are strong, but I think that sometimes strength comes from kind of our situations and our people that support us as well, because when I was injured, I obviously had friends and family and like medical staff and everyone that was involved in my recovery. And I'm sure you'll feel the same with yours as well. That you need that support, and you need almost others to show you that you're strong sometimes. And those comments of I couldn't do it or whatever sometimes just highlight that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they do. Well, they are a backhanded compliment. You're right. They make you feel somewhat empowered, but then at the same time, they make you think, I don't really want to be in this position either. So thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, yeah, it's a strange one.
It is. So I now want to turn it over to you. So I want you to basically take me back, or take us back to wherever you think most resonates with who you are today and everything that's happened, and kind of, anywhere that you want to start. It's over to you.
So, yeah, starting the podcast with kind of a cryptic message of, yes, so I broke my neck when I was 16 and I got back up. Yeah, so I should probably give a little bit of a background of where it started, really. So, when I was 16 years old, I was in a car crash on the road. So, we were just driving back to school, no one's fault, just wrong place, wrong time. And I broke my neck at level C6-7. And that means that I'm paralyzed from the chest down. I also have limited hand function. Um, However, I've never really let that be a barrier to doing anything I've wanted to do in life. And in 2015, I became the first female tetraplegic racing driver in the world. Um, in 2018, I became the first female tetraplegic rally driver in the world. I'm currently still the only female tetraplegic racing driver in the world. So, just for those that don't know, tetraplegia is something that happens when you break your neck, when you've got paralysis in all four limbs. So tetra, I think, is Latin for four. Paraplegia is paralysis in two limbs. So paraplegics usually have full hand and arm function if they don't have any other disabilities, whereas tetraplegics have limited hand and arm function. So that's a lot of people get confused with that term, because if you haven't really come across it, you'll not really know about it. Or people get confused with tetraplegia being kind of Christopher Reeve type injuries, where you've got no movement below your neck, which is also tetraplegic, but tetraplegia has a scale from kind of Christopher Reeve's level to my level. So it basically just means someone with paralysis whose arms and hands are affected. So yeah, I wasn't always into motorsports. So when I graduated, or not graduated, but got my A levels, I went to university. Didn't really know what I was going to do, but knew that I needed to get my degree, because I'd always wanted to go to university and get a degree. So breaking my neck wasn't going to let me or prevent me from doing that. And at university, I actually found a sport called wheelchair rugby. So whilst I was getting my degree, I was also training to try and make it onto the Paralympic squad. And rugby, once I graduated, became my full time job. Is kind of the wrong word, because jobs usually get paid for, but it was my full time occupation, or it was my reason for getting up in the morning. I trained 5 days a week. I went to any tournament I could to play and just improve my ability as an athlete. But I absolutely loved the sport. Finding wheelchair rugby was like the making of me after breaking my neck, because suddenly I was surrounded by people that were all like me, all absolutely kicking ass with living with spinal injuries, which was predominantly the disability that wheelchair rugby attracted back when I started playing, which was early 2004, maybe. But yeah, the guys there, just they taught me how to live with my disability, but not only how to live, but how to thrive. And rugby was everything to me. It was something that I absolutely fell in love with because I stopped kind of being someone who'd been injured in a car crash and people felt sorry for, to being an athlete, to doing something that other people couldn't do. Um, and yeah, it was something that I think without rugby I wouldn't be racing, because rugby taught me about discipline, it taught me about strength, it taught me about breaking boundaries. Because when I started playing, I was the only woman in the country to play for, I think, a year before another lady started playing who's now a good friend of mine. But wheelchair rugby is a mixed sport. So, without going into too much detail about para sport classification, which is really complicated, you're classified in terms of your function. So a team of rugby players is made up by 8 points of four players who total 8 points. But when a woman is on the court, you're allowed an extra half point because women are naturally weaker than men, or not as strong, should I say. So there's a level playing field for women to be able to compete on level terms with men. So that was kind of, I didn't really think about it actually. It wasn't like, oh, I want to do this to break boundaries. I didn't really see in myself any differently to the guys. But I suppose that led the way for me being able to kind of break into motorsport, because I had that attitude that I just did what I loved and I wouldn't conform to kind of social norms or whatever people thought that I should be doing as a disabled female. And I just did what I loved and followed my heart. So yeah, it's sorry, that's a really long kind of answer or to your question without letting you kind of intervene. So I might just pause there.
No, don't be silly. It's absolutely fine. It's always really interesting. It's always really interesting to listen to and to hear how you navigated from obviously the accident, and then obviously into wheelchair rugby. And then I want to know how did you transition from the wheelchair rugby then into motorsports?
So I had always kind of, well, not always, but I developed kind of a passion for cars because when I first learnt to drive, I was still really struggling with my identity as a disabled person. And being in a car hid the fact that I was disabled. So I could, cruise around in my car in my, late teens, early 20s, and no one would see the chair. So, and driving was also a freedom for me because before I had a license, I had to rely on friends. Obviously, public transport isn't hugely accessible. And being a university student, you want to be able to do what your mates are doing. So I, I formed quite an attachment to cars from the moment I got my license. And fast forward a few years when I went to a tournament in Toulouse in France for wheelchair rugby, and I met someone who had kind of a passion for cars like I did, and he said his car was faster than mine, and I didn't really want that to be the truth. So he said, "Well, why don't you come on a track day and we'll see, who's right." So I had no idea what track days were. So when he told me that you could go to a racetrack and drive your car as fast as you dare around the circuit and it to be legal and fun and relatively safe, depending on your driving skill, I jumped at the chance, went to my first track day, and that's how it started. Because from the first day that I went, I was just addicted. And I think apart from the adrenaline and kind of the speed and enjoyment of the actual driving, I also loved the environment that I'd found myself in. So wheelchair rugby was, obviously everyone was disabled. It was a safe space for me. It was an opportunity to kind of take the mickey out of each other's disabilities and just normalize things. But going out into the real world, the kind of non-institutionalized world, I was different. And people were curious about things like ask about my wheelchair or whatever. And I didn't want any of that. I just wanted to blend in. So the track days for me, people were interested in how I drove the car with the hand controls, but it was a different kind of interest. It wasn't like a you're different, I want to ask questions. It was like from a mechanical point of view, I don't understand how you can drive a car without your legs working. So I'd like to have a look at the hand controls from, a perspective of we're doing the same thing, you're doing it in a different way. Mechanically, I'd like to understand how that works. So I just found the whole community of track days very different from kind of other areas of life. And I immediately felt really comfortable. Um, so started doing track days as an expensive hobby, if you like, whilst I was training to try and break into the Paralympic squad with GB. And in 2011, I think I've been doing track days for 5 or 6 years, and I got an injury in rugby that took me out for 9 months. And when I went back to try and regain my position on the GB long squad, I just something had changed. It was just the passion that I had had that had driven me to just dedicate my life to rugby just wasn't there anymore. And I felt like I'd just come to the end of where I could go with rugby, kind of enjoyment wise. So I decided from kind of that point that I would have a look at getting my racing license and see where that would take me. And that's where it kind of led.
Do you, with regards to then, obviously, we're talking about the Paralympics, is that something that you, I mean, obviously, it's something that you obviously came away from, but do you ever wish that it was something that you continued, or especially when when it's on at the moment, do you ever sit there and think, that could have been I know obviously it's a difficult question, but that could have been me, or is that something that I'm happy I moved on from?
So I watched the wheelchair rugby final last night and I still absolutely love the sport. But there's been no point since I gave rugby up that I have regretted it. I think like getting to the Paralympics was absolutely everything to me. I used to think about ways that I could make it happen. I had this stupid idea that I would write a book that would be my journey to the Paralympics. And in writing the book, I would actually make it happen because I would follow the narrative of the book I would write and I would find myself there. And I really, really struggled with mental toughness with wheelchair rugby because I would be so hard on myself if I wasn't good enough or I didn't make the squad or someone, you know, that I thought that I was a better player than got the better of me. And I did struggle with that. But there has been no regrets with giving it up. It was, like I say, wheelchair rugby is something that I will always be hugely passionate about and will always hold a place in my heart. And I owe rugby everything, but I'm happy that I left when I did. And you say the Paralympics is on at the moment, which is I love this time of year. Watching the Paralympics for me is brilliant. But I think there needs to be almost an educational piece around how non-disabled people who don't have kind of first-hand experience with disabled people think about the Paralympics, because you get a lot of people at this time of year saying to disabled people, are you going to go to the Paralympics? And it's kind of like, would you see someone going for a casual run in the park and go, are you going to go to the Olympics? There's two things there. The first is that I think it's a really important message that disabled people don't need to be validated by the Paralympics or sports, that disabled people can achieve anything that they want to in life, just like non-disabled people can. So being in jobs that they've, achieved great things in, or even just jobs that they're happy in, or having a family, or being sports people, or doing any of the things that non-disabled people do to validate themselves kind of in their own lives, that should be granted in the same way to disabled people. So I think there's that and not everyone wants to go to the Paralympics either, but also assuming that every disabled person can go to the Paralympics is underestimating what it takes to get there. Because I trained for years and I gave everything to that sport. And whether it was that I didn't want it badly enough, so I didn't give it enough, or I was in a time where maybe it wasn't my time, and maybe I could have gotten, maybe I could have made the squad if there had been a different time and different players around. But I trained hard for that, and I didn't make it because for whatever reason I wasn't good enough. And that's okay, but Paralympic athletes are hugely talented, they're hugely dedicated, and their chances of getting there are slim. So I think the next time anyone kind of thinks about commenting to disabled people about going to the Paralympics, just to bear that in mind, that the Paralympic athletes are just the same as the Olympic athletes, but with a disability. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, but that's a really valid point because it's exactly that. You don't see someone running in the park and think, "Oh, are they going to be sprinting next, in the Olympics next, in 4 years?" Or but it's with any sport. You don't see someone playing football in the park and think, "Oh, what team are they going to sign up for?" Or it's no, it's exactly that. And I think also it's a really what you said about obviously it didn't work out for you, and you don't regret it is really interesting because I wanted to ask that because I know some people that anything in life when they do something and then they for whatever reason they can't or they don't continue it anymore and they might look back in years to come thinking I regret that I shouldn't have done it. So it was an interesting point just to hear if you did or you didn't, because I think in your heart maybe it was the right choice, or you still love the sport and you still watch it, but you're okay with it, you're kind of at peace with it. And it's also interesting in a way that not obviously achieving that dream, let's say, led you on to something really cool, and onto something in some ways, of everything's amazing, but in some ways even more amazing. And I think it's a really interesting point because it's shown me and obviously people that are listening that if something doesn't work out for you, even if it's a dream, no matter how much you want it, if it's not meant to work out for you for whatever the reason, it's just not going to work out for you. But that doesn't mean nothing's going to work out for you. That usually means something probably more amazing, something you never even thought of is then going to show up at your doorstep however long later.
Yeah, it's like that every cloud kind of cliche that people say, or one door opens, another door, or one door closes, another door opens. But I remember, and so a very good friend of mine, who is my wheelchair rugby teammate and coach, who came to stay a couple of months ago. I told him about this. He said to me, quite in kind of the height of my wheelchair rugby career, we were talking about selection, and he was comparing me to another player, and he said, "I think that you're better than that other player. If I was making the GB selection, I'd pick you over him." And I can't remember how the next bit came about, but he said to me, "You're not a leader. You're a sheep. You're a really good sheep, but you're definitely not a leader." And I remember thinking, I don't want to be a sheep. I want to be a leader. And I think I didn't dwell on it too much at the time, but something in that definitely stayed with me because what I'm doing now, and I'm not that I'm a leader, but I didn't want to be part of the I did want to be part of the crowd because I loved my team, but I think I just wanted something bigger. And whether that says anything about my personality with team sports, I don't know. But that statement said, just in passing, I think somehow shaped my ambition.
I reckon it was always in there, but again, it was one of those passing comments that was made that ignited that deeper side of you that thought, "Hey, wait a minute. There is more than, I mean, this is amazing, but there's something more that I need to do for myself."
Mm, I think so. And I think that I can't remember how long after kind of that period it was when I went down this road. I think it wasn't like a quick thing. I think it might have been maybe 2.5, 3 years away from or before I decided to start racing and give up rugby. Because when I gave up rugby, I didn't give it up completely. I gave it up with tournaments and stuff, but I still trained. I only gave up rugby completely in February of this year. So I was still kind of training a little bit, really sporadically, not really committing too much, but didn't want to let it go. And then I went to a wheelchair rugby tournament and I was just like, I need to leave this here now so that my memories of what I had were amazing and not diluted by what I'm doing, like currently. So yeah, it seems strange that it took that long, but I always kind of thought because my training, my teammates were my family. When I lived in London, we did everything together. We'd train, we'd go out, we'd spend time at people's houses, and it was a proper family community. And I think I tried to find that when I left London and I live just outside Silverstone now, um, obviously, for the racing. And I tried to find like a team that I could kind of just pick that up with. And the team that I was playing for was coached by a very, very good friend of mine who I started out my rugby career with. But I don't know if I just felt a bit old with with kind of the young blood that was coming through. I didn't have the connections that I used to have. So I was like, it's time to really hang my gloves up for good. So I did.
But I don't think it's weird because you said it's strange that it took you so long to let go, but I don't find that strange because I think that it obviously was such a part of you. And like you said, you had a family, you had friends, you had, everything that came with it. And it was such a part of you that even if we think we want to let something go, we don't until we're ready. And that's just, I think, what we do as human beings. We just don't until we're finally ready to do it. And there was obviously a part of you at the beginning of this year that went, okay, like that huge chapter part of my life is like, I'm ready to move on from it now. And like you say, you hold it with fond memories always, but we don't close those chapters, no matter how big or small they are, until we are ready to do it for whatever our reasons are.
You framed that really nicely because I kind of thought that it was a negative thing and that I didn't like where the sport was going, or I came away from a tournament going, this isn't how I remember it. And it wasn't like a good thing for me. It wasn't a positive kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like when I decided that I would leave it, it wasn't like I'm really happy with my choice. I was almost disappointed that it had come to this. But I think you framing it like that maybe that this was just my time to do it, puts it in actually a really nice kind of way. So thank you. I'd struggle with that a bit, and I think that that's a really nice way to think about it. I was just ready to do it, and it wasn't negative or positive. It was just my time to say that's it. So thanks.
My pleasure, my pleasure. But that's how I see those kind of things. And no matter how hard it might be to walk away from anything.
Mm,
Um, Usually when we do it, yeah, it's usually the right time. So,
mm.
and then I just want to also then mention about we mentioned a little bit about kind of mental health and mindset, but I want to go back to the age of 16 and obviously being a teenager and having this accident is life changing, of course, but obviously it's going to affect you. It could affect you in ways that obviously most teenagers, especially at the time, weren't probably going through. And I want to just know a little bit more about how that did affect you mentally and kind of what happened with that afterwards.
I think it's tough to really talk about how it affected me mentally because physically I was really unwell. So I was in intensive care. I was on I had a tracheostomy to help me breathe. I had pneumonia. I had a collapsed lung. Um, so it was almost like a fight for survival in those first days. Like I can't remember when someone first told me that I wasn't going to walk again. And like this, it's the whole cliche when you have a spinal injury, you're not going to walk again. It's like God, if only that was the only thing we had to deal with. Like spinal injuries are really complex. Like I think this sounds ridiculous, but the thing that affects me worse the worst thing for me about my spinal injury is my inability to regulate my body temperature. So, because my autonomic nervous system isn't connected to my brain, which is responsible for body temperature, pain response, heartbeat, lots of different other functions, I can't sweat in hot weather and I can't get goosebumps. So, the only time I'll sweat or get goosebumps is if I'm in pain because my autonomic nervous system just dysfunctions. So I'm always cold or I'm always too hot, and my blood pressure is always on the floor. My blood pressure, like normally, is about 40, 80 over 40, which if you go to the doctors, they're kind of like, "Oh my god, do you need to lie down?" I'm like, "No, no, I'm just constantly on the verge of fainting." Um, just to clarify, I can wear like an abdominal binder, which I do in the car, so I'm not on the verge of fainting when I'm racing. Just in case anyone's like, "Oh, maybe she shouldn't be on the racetrack." Um, but like, yeah, so there are spinal injuries are such complex conditions to live with that the walking is like if you said to me I could give you like four things back that were taken away from you when you had your spinal injury, walking wouldn't be anywhere close to that, like to have back. So I don't remember when anyone kind of said, you're going to spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair and these are the other complications you're going to have. I think because I was heavily drugged up with like morphine and stuff, so my memories of being in intensive care, like the time frame is just, it's almost like time didn't happen. Which seems like a bizarre thing to say. And I don't remember anything that happened in reality. I was having weird hallucinations that were very strange. So kind of mental health wise or mentally coping with that, it wasn't until I kind of got to the spinal unit where I would begin my rehab that I kind of could deal with it. So, or not deal with it, but just start to experience the reality of wow, this is my life now. And I think one of the really hard things for me was that all of my friends were just going on with their A levels, going to school, and I was being left behind. So when I eventually came out of spinal rehab, which was 11 months after I was injured, so I was in hospital for 11 months, which is 16 is, you know, you don't want to be doing that at 16. Um, but I was in the year below at school. So I think I was discharged for 2 weeks and went straight back to school, which I still say like racing cars, playing wheelchair rugby, all the rest of it, going back to school was the bravest thing I've ever done because it was like, it was, I just remember, I always cry when I tell the story. So, I just remember I just said to my mum just before I left, I was just like, "What if I can't do it?" And she just said, "If you can't, you come back and we figure something else out." And it was like, it was knowing that mum had said kind of, "It's okay to fail." I didn't want to fail. So I can remember the first day back at school was just like, it was so overwhelming because the ghosts of my able-bodied self were in all of the corridors, all of the classrooms, the playground, the stage, because I used to be involved in like after school drama classes and stuff. So it was all just memories of what I used to be. Um, my friends were really good. My friends were amazing. My best friend Helen and best friends Helen and Alex just like got me through it. And also I had some friends in the year below from mainly from drama stuff. And they looked after me because it was really hard when my year that I'd grown up with went to university and I was left on my own. But people looked after me, and it was school, like sixth form is meant to be, an amazing time where you're looking forward to kind of going on to independence and university or jobs or whatever you want to do. And for me, it was just like, I've just got to get this done so I can go to university and start my new life. So, kind of life for me didn't begin again until I went to university because when I was at school, I was always the girl, Nathalie who'd broken her neck in the car crash. Whereas when I went to university, I was just like everyone else, just starting out independent from parents, coping with, all of the trauma of not having your mum and dad there to do your washing or whatever it is. But I pretty early on at uni, I found a friendship group of mainly gay men because I think we had like a bit of a synergy of university was time to be ourselves because quite a few of my friends had come out fairly recently or came out at university, and there was a brilliant gay scene in Nottingham that we used to just go to, and I didn't have any of the pressure of trying to find my identity and kind of date boys or men or whatever. I could just relax in because I still really struggled with identity even then, but I could just be with my friends who didn't have any, ulterior motive. No one was looking at me in the club and me thinking, oh, why are all the other girls getting asked to, buy them to buy drinks and or getting drinks bought for them and I'm not. It was a great way for me to really kind of just find who I was again. Um, and I loved it as well, like because it was little bit like wheelchair rugby that they just take the mickey out of my disability, which I just wanted to be normal, and taking the mickey out of people when you're that age is normal. And yeah, my gay friends at uni really helped me come to terms with living with a disability. So yeah, there wasn't like a time that I can kind of say, oh, I kind of took stock of the situation and dealt with it. I just day by day, piece by piece, I found things that made me confident, made me happy, and made me comfortable with who I was.
It's like we said at the beginning, it's a constant journey and we're constantly evolving, learning, shape shifting, however we want to see it. And it's a really interesting way of, story of how you said it as well, because, you know, for whatever it is, whether it's going to uni or wherever you go in life, where you suddenly can start to figure out who you really are in whatever way and shape and form and capacity, and really start to figure out just who you are and what you like and what you don't like, and just anything. And rather than being told you should do this, you shouldn't do that, you should be here, you should be there, being able to be almost free in that way to, at whatever age. I know, because it happens, some people it happens too much younger, and some
Yeah.
people don't have these moments until they're much older. When you start to really learn about yourself and what makes you happy and what makes you you is actually really important.
Mm, yeah, I completely agree. And I think that that changed for me in so many different ways, because it was my safe space of kind of the gay clubs and um, my gay friends who gave me confidence, that then allowed me to then go to wheelchair rugby and find that community who gave me confidence and allowed me to find motorsports. So it's almost like my journey of acceptance and recovery happened in kind of like steps, and each step and each support network I formed helped me kind of move on to the next step, which is not like a staircase. It's almost like a lateral, because it's not like racing is better than rugby, is better than my community I had at uni. It's just they helped me find something else that I could add to my kind of my life and my happiness and my purpose.
100%. And it's that classic thing of when you think to yourself, oh, I've got nowhere in the last 5, 10, 15, however many years. And you really think that, you're stagnant and you haven't got anywhere. But then if you look back, you've literally just explained it. If you look back, you can see all the little, medium, small, huge, however shape and size they are, steps that, or however way you want to put it, that led you to the next part of your journey, to the next, that leads you to who you are today. And when you sit there and people look back and they think, oh, I'm got nowhere in the last year. But then if you really broke it down, you can see all the little things that added up,
Yeah,
day by day, that did get you to the person you are today.
absolutely.
And then I want to touch upon motorsports. What, where are you going with it at the moment? And also, while we're also on this question, what is your most, I want to say interesting, but what's one of the most amazing memories you have so far in the sport?
So those are two questions
I
that
know.
have very long answers. So I'll do the most interesting bit after I've talked about kind of where I am, and I can't talk about where I am without talking about how I got there. So got my license in 2015 and started racing in the Porsche Club Championship, which is a hugely competitive championship. And stupidly, I secretly thought I might win my first race. These are men that have been racing for 20 years. Some of them are ex British GT drivers, hugely competitive. And I was like, I know I'm new. But what if I actually won my first race? I never verbalized it, but in the back of my head, I thought maybe it could be possible. Obviously, it didn't happen. I finished. I did finish. I think 14th out of 21 drivers. So my lap times were credible. I didn't embarrass myself. I was like, I can do this. Um, but so I started racing in Porsche Club and continued with that for maybe 3 years consistently. And then I think in the fourth year, I went into two other championships, which Porsche Club was on slick tyres, and I went into a treaded tyres couple of championships, and then I stopped doing Porsche Club, I think after 5 years. And I still continued to race in 750 Motor Club and Classic Sports Car Club. So I've done, what else have I done? So I've done a couple of endurance races as well. Still with the same car. The endurance races I did in a friend's car, which weirdly is now my car. So I've got a Porsche Cayman S race car, which I've had since the beginning and is still my race car. And it's been through various bits of development. This season, it's just been broken for the whole season. which has been really frustrating. So I haven't done any races this year. I don't know. I've got one in October, but I don't know whether I'll do it. I think my next test day on the 16th of September, which is my 25-year anniversary of being injured. So that's a very good way to celebrate. Um, Hopefully, that test day will be the day that we go, we have overcome all of the problems and we can now move forward. But the car that I raced in the endurance races was a VW Cup Golf, and it was owned by my friend who's a paraplegic who had some brachial plexus, so shoulder damage, so had a weaker right arm without full hand function. So it was like perfect for me. And we shared the car for 2 endurance races. He then sold the car to someone else, and then I bought it off the next person, which was a big mistake because it was a cheap race car, and cheap race cars are never cheap race cars. So I've had it for 2.5 years and I haven't driven it yet. It's still not right. I've spent more money on it than I've spent on it, than I bought it for. So, yeah, but it will be amazing. My husband keeps saying I should just get rid of it, but I'm too far in now. I have to drive it. I have to see what it's like. Because when we raced it, it was an amazing car, and I took to it really well because the Golf's front wheel drive, the Cayman's rear wheel drive, and I was just quite natural in it. So I'm hoping that next season we can get out in that. So yeah, so I started racing in 2015, and then in 2016 I actually created with my husband a charity for disabled people called Spinal Track. So when I started racing, I had lots of messages from people saying, "Oh my god, this is amazing! I'm disabled too. Can I have a go in your race car?" And it was like, not really. But we had enough messages where we said to each other, "Look, there's a demand for something that isn't accessible for people." So I was in a fortunate position that um, I worked hard to get sponsors, and I could buy my race car and go racing. But for other people, if they don't have that opportunity, or if their road car isn't appropriate for track use and they need adaptations, there isn't anything, or there's limited. There are some other things that have popped up along the way, but what we offer is, I consider, to be the best. So we have 3 track cars and 4 rally cars, and we offer track day experiences and used to offer rally experiences, which is evolving into car control experiences. And all of our cars are set up with either hand controls or left foot accelerators. So we cater for as many different disabilities as we can. You need a valid driving license and enough upper body strength to be able to control the car. But if you're physically disabled, then we give you your first opportunity at driving quickly around Silverstone, or learning how to join slides up around a rally circuit or a slippery surface circuit, which is the new venue is yet to be confirmed. But yeah, and we offer it for free. So we work hard to get sponsors and companies to pay for the programs, and we have 100 disabled drivers a year through our programs. So I started that in 2016, and then more recently we've evolved into like a community, not resource, but I've created a spinal track community for people that have been on our days, and we've done that for 2 reasons. The first reason is that we saw how much more people were getting from the days than just the driving. So whether it was learning life hacks from other disabled people, or friends and family seeing what was possible and just coping with their loved one's disability a bit better. And so the first year we were running, we had a guy from the Isle of Wight come with his dad, and he'd been the same age as me when he was injured, same level as injury as me, and a hugely passionate driver, had done all of the advanced kind of driving courses that you could do on the road, but always wanted to do a track day, but it had never been possible. And my husband was on the pit wall with Andy's dad, and Andy's dad just looked at my husband, and he just tears rolling down his face, and he said, "I never thought I'd get to see my son driving a race car or a track car around Silverstone." And he just said, "Thank you." And it was kind of that moment that we often kind of used to motivate us when it was tough to get sponsorship, or the cars went wrong, or we had to rejig the programs. And then a few years later, when we'd set up the rally program, we had a lady come on the day who had had a stroke at a really young age, and she had recovered enough to be able to walk with a stick and didn't use a wheelchair, but she had completely shunned kind of disability and didn't kind of associate herself with disability because she could walk, and didn't wasn't really interested in asking for help or finding out about kind of disabled communities. And she spent the day, because we've got obviously the driving, but then the downtime is spent with the other drivers, just either in a garage or in the venue. And she spent the day with 5 wheelchair users, and we got a lovely email from her partner who'd come on the day afterwards saying that after the day and spending, the time with the other 5 wheelchair users, she had realized that being disabled wasn't anything to be ashamed of, and that you could achieve anything you wanted to with a disability, and that she no longer was ashamed of being disabled, that she was a proud disabled person, and that she would go about life now seeing what her opportunities were as a disabled person, rather than struggling and trying to live as an able-bodied person with her symptoms of her stroke. So the community was built so that we could build upon those experiences and give people more opportunity to network with friends and family or other disabled people. But the community was also built for me, because coming away from rugby, I had my disabled community that were my support network, were people that I could ask for advice. And I didn't realize how much I missed that. I just thought I felt like something was missing and didn't really know what it was. And sometimes I thought it might be a bit of depression, but I just couldn't shake this feeling of just not feeling kind of complete. So I think I built this community for my own needs and my own support network. And I can remember I had a really bad season in 2017, I think it was, where I almost left rugby. Oh, sorry, left racing. And I managed to kind of overcome all of the kind of feelings of not being good enough and just struggling a bit with mental toughness. And I just go to my spinal track days, and I just realized that I had all I needed there. Because I think I struggled when I was down in racing, that I couldn't see anyone that looked like me to draw inspiration and strength from. And then I realized that I didn't need that, because I had my spinal track community that would big me up when I needed, a bit of a boost, or just be there for me, or I could chat to. And I've made so many friends from it. So that's something that we started last year, and we're continuing this year, which is amazing. So going back to your question about what's the most amazing thing that's happened to you in racing, which I think was your question, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking at the answer, which I'll just show you. So that's me presenting Kimi Raikkonen with his third place trophy after the Silverstone Grand Prix 2018. That is the most incredible thing that has happened to me from this journey. So that came about because in the summer of 2017, I was asked to go and speak at a Women in Motorsport conference with the FIA. So I went along and I talked about disability and safety in motorsports, And off the back of that, I was asked to speak at their international sport conference later in the year. And Jean Todt was there. And he came to me after my speech and said, "Well done." And I thought, okay, that's cool. Jean's not doesn't he's not a small talk guy. He says things that he means, and just thought I'd done a good job, and kind of went home and thought that, wow, I've been to an FIA conference and spoken, and that's pretty cool. And then I was asked to go to the FIA offices in Paris later that summer for what I thought was to have more discussions on kind of disability and safety in motorsports. And I arrived at the offices, and the General Secretary for Sport, Peter Bayer, who is now the CEO of VCARB, so the old AlphaTauri team, and him and Gerard Salion, who was the head of the medical commission, were showing me some dossiers that they'd drawn up for disability in motorsports. And we'd been chatting away for about 45 minutes. And Peter said, "Oh, we haven't really told you why we've got you here today, have we?" And I was like, "Well, I thought it was kind of just to talk about this." And he said, "Oh, no, Jean has created a new commission called the Disability and Accessibility Commission, and he wants you to be the president of it." And I was just like, "What?" So he was like, "So what do you think?" And I was like, "Well, I would be absolutely honoured." And he said, "Right, okay, well, let me phone John and get him to come down." So John came down, and he said, "Thank you for agreeing to do this." He said, "This isn't just a box ticking exercise. We've got some real progress to make. Can I count on your support?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I've been in that role since the beginning of 2018. And the Commission is responsible for the global legislation when it comes to disabled people involved in motorsport. And that's not just competitors, that's volunteers and officials, marshals, co-drivers. If you have any reason to be at a motorsport circuit or involved in motorsport in any way and you have a physical disability, my commission is there to make sure that you are represented and that the access is there for your needs. So off the back of that, David Richards, who is the chair of Motorsport UK, had invited me to a trustee dinner at his house in early 2018. And he gave my husband Andrew and I a glass of champagne, and he told us to arrive early just so that we could, he said, "So I can show you around and make sure you're comfortable before the other trustees arrive." And we were in his garden, and I had my glass of champagne, and he said, "Are you going to the British Grand Prix this year?" And I said, "Well, yes, very kindly. I'm going as a guest of Motorsport UK on the Saturday, so thank you for the invitation. And I'm going as a guest of the FIA on Sunday." And he said, "Good, because you'll be presenting the third place trophy after the race." And I sat there with my mouth open, and I just said, "Oh my God, thank you." I didn't know what to say. And he said, "I just need to clear it with Jean Todt first, but it'll be fine. So you can't tell anyone." I was like, "Oh my God." So I think it was like maybe 3 weeks before the race that I was allowed to tell people. And the week leading up to the race was absolutely incredible because I'm an ambassador for Wings for Life, which is Red Bull's spinal injury charity, and that all of their money goes towards research for finding a cure for paralysis. And they'd asked me to go and speak at what's called their Clay Day, which is on the Wednesday before the Grand Prix, the British Grand Prix, which is at a shooting ground just outside of the M25. And all the Red Bull team are there. So they asked me to go and speak just before the day kicked off. So I was there speaking in front of, Christian Horner, Jerry Halliwell, Max, Daniel Ricciardo was on their team. And it was that really hot summer we had of 2018. So the weather was amazing. And then I went down to London to speak at the F1 Ball, which I think is hosted by Wings for Life. And I was on a table with Mark Webber, and Mark was like speaking, and I went up on stage to speak after. David Coulthard was there, and it was just like, how can this week get any better? So we went to qualifying on the Saturday, and I was in the paddock, and I saw Kimi, and I either wanted Kimmy or Max to win, or to get third place, so that I could present the trophy. And I saw Kimmy, and I was like, I'm just going to go up to him and say hi. And so I kind of stormed up to him and was like, "Hi, Kimmy. My name's Nathalie McGloin. I'm the president of the FIA Disability and Accessibility Commission, and I'm presenting the third place trophy tomorrow on the podium." And he kind of looked at me, and I'm sure through his head went, "Crazy woman in a wheelchair, of course you are." So I just said, "Oh, can we have a photo?" He was like, "Yeah." So we posed for a photo, and I said, "Where did you qualify?" Because we hadn't seen it because we'd just been in the paddock. And he said, "Oh, I've qualified third." And I said, "Oh, well, I might be presenting you with the trophy tomorrow." And he said, "If you are, you want to get yourself a different trophy because I don't want to come third." And I was like, "Right, okay, fair enough." So the day of the race, we went up onto the podium. We were in the green room beforehand, where they go after they've come in just before they go out onto the podium. And I was so nervous, and it was really, really hot. And the little bit that I had to go in to present the trophy was just like a sun trap. And like, if I get too hot, my legs jump around. And I was thinking, first of all, I can't sweat. What if I pass out in front of all of these people? Secondly, what if they put the trophy on my legs and it starts jumping around and it falls off? So all of these stupid thoughts were going in my head. And I was sat there looking down thinking, oh my God, the cars aren't even back yet. So I don't know how long it's going to be until the drivers come out onto. So anyway, I was okay, and Kimmy walked out, and he didn't look at me because he obviously was looking at the crowd. He stood on his podium, and I was kind of behind the little stand that the trophies were on, so I was concealed from the drivers. So when it was announced that, my name, and I went round to present the trophy, I came round the corner, and the guy put the trophy on my lap, and Kimmy just jumped down from his step, and he went, "Oh my God, you said you would be here." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I wasn't lying." And he was so sweet. He helped me give him the trophy. He could see that my hands didn't work properly. He went to shake my hand, but he did it with two hands so that he could properly help me get a proper handshake with him. And then Lewis came down and shook my hand, and so did Sebastian. Sebastian won the race. And afterwards, I remember I just went around the corner. I had sunglasses on. I was just crying. And Matteo Bonatelli, who is that how you pronounce his name? He used to be the main guy for F1 who orchestrated all of that. He's since moved to a different role, a different job. I think he's still a consultant for F1. He started crying as well, like passionate Italian guy, and we were just like in each other's arms, kind of crying. And then Andrew came up, and it was just, it was brilliant. And Kimmy posed for a photo with me, and he just made the experience so much more special because the Iceman was so warm. He was such a nice guy, and I've seen him many times after, and he's always he'll speak to me, and we have proper chats and stuff. Well, proper chats for Kimmy. And then we both got drunk in Russia at an F1 ball, which is that famous video of him kind of on the stage, very drunk, and then had a little chat about that. I can't remember what it was about, but yeah, it was the best thing. And I still say to this day that it was the best day of my life, even though my husband's like, "You should say your wedding was the best day of your life." But it's fine because my husband raced in Daytona last year, and he said that was the best day of his life. So we've got our best days of our lives and then our wedding, so it's all right. We're even now.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, there you go. There you go. You can, yeah, you're even. So,
We're allowed.
but the wedding second. I'm really glad I asked both those questions because both those stories were beautiful. Like they were both really heartwarming stories. And I could see also, obviously, if people aren't watching this, I could see the passion in your eyes and your whole face as well when you were detailing those stories. Honestly, yeah, they were really beautiful to listen to. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Of course. And I think, again, it's like what we've been saying this whole time. It's, when you look back at where you once started and then all the things that have happened in your life, big and small, it's a journey, and they're all, it's amazing to see what you've achieved and just the things that you've been able to do. And even like stories like that, like they are wicked. Like that's a wicked story. Like, and it's, and again, I love what when you were talking about, creating something that was for yourself, or potentially, for yourself and for, your wants and your needs. But then again, at the same time, how that's also helped others, and to help others do things that they never thought in their life they'd probably ever do again, or not just that, maybe accept themselves for things that they've been pushing away, their shadows, their darkness that they've been keeping at bay for however many years. Because at the end of the day, it's also a case of learning to love who you are, everything you've been through, and learning to love not just your light, but the dark and everything else that makes you who you are. And it's to be able to give people, for you to be able to give people those chances where they can come back the next day and be like, wow, like, you know what, I'm okay with who I am. And not okay, actually, I'm actually really happy with who I am, and I'm not afraid to be who I'm meant to be, is beautiful. So
That's what I love about what we do. It gives me as much as it gives everyone else. So it's definitely not a one way kind of ticket with people receiving, because I'm getting as much back from it, and my husband does as well, than we give to other people. So
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely, I can see it. So, and then before we do wrap up, I want to ask you a question, and I want to ask. So obviously, it's a very broad, very generic question, but and it can come out very differently for everyone. And obviously, everyone, they can take advice or not, and it's, again, advice is very different for everyone. But what advice would you give to somebody? Again, like I said, everyone takes things very differently, but what would you give to somebody that is in that stage where they they're following a dream, and they're starting to see that maybe that dream isn't happening, and the self-doubt's creeping in, the warranted or the unwarranted voices of, I'm not good enough, I'm not this enough, I'm not the standard, when we feel that, the standard that every human being has felt at least at some point in their life, the I'm not good enough.
mhm,
What would you say to somebody that's in that stage, and they literally do not know what to do, and they're succumbing to the I'm not good enough, I'm just not going to get anywhere with
mhm.
just anywhere?
I think I'm still in that stage at times. I think I'm a massive sufferer of imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
and I think a lot of people are. So my advice isn't going to come from a place where I've overcome that, because I haven't. I'm constantly thinking that I'm not good enough as a driver. I've got more to prove. That potentially I'm not doing enough for my roles that I've been gifted. I'm just constantly striving for more, and I think that that's what incites imposter syndrome. That you have high expectations of yourself, and I think that, like you said earlier, if you can kind of just take a step back and look at where you've come from and see the achievements that you've kind of made along your journey, whatever that journey might be, I think that sometimes really helps to see at that point, if you feel overwhelmed by the fear that you're not good enough, looking back and seeing what you have achieved, because you'll have felt like that at every stage of the way. You can see that you overcome it and you do achieve what you need to achieve. But I also think that not being afraid of failure is a huge strength, because I am still someone that is trying to come to terms with failure. And I've failed so many times, but I always know how to get back up. And I think that if you can use your weaknesses and your failures to learn how to be stronger, if you always have something that reminds you of where you've come from, or remind you of the massive achievements you've made or the small achievements, because all achievements are relevant. You just need that focus to look at something or listen to something or even smell something, your senses that jog you back into how you felt when you made that achievement or you overcame that hurdle or you got back up from a failure. It's those kind of emotions that I kind of live off for driving me forward. In my gym this morning, I've got all of my best achievements from my races just in the TSL timesheets in frames. And I haven't raced this year. And I'm thinking, what if I've forgotten how to drive? And I looked at them all this morning and I went, I've done it before. I can do it again. So that would be my advice.
I love that. I really, really love that. And I think, like we have said many times throughout today's episode, we are constantly learning and we are constantly on a journey, and it's constantly up and down. And every time we get into those down phases, we have the string of I'm not good enough, or the whatever the self doubt is, or the imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away. It comes in and out and in and out. But I really like how you completely highlighted that with when you are in those moments. I know it's going to be really difficult to even say it to yourself, but to just, yeah, to look back or to look at something physically in front of you or to hear something, smell something, anything that your senses can to make you realize you've done it before, you're going to do it again. And it might be a very different thing you're doing, but you got through that hurdle. You'll get through this one.
Exactly.
Amazing. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Is there anything else that you want to discuss today?
No, I really enjoyed this. I haven't done a podcast for a long time, and I've had a lot of fun chatting to you for this hour. So thank you so much.
Letting go isn't necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't have to be fueled with either positive or negative emotions. It's just letting go of what no longer serves us and serves our futures. A lot of the time, we don't want to let go and move on. People, places, jobs, countries, experiences, and moments. How many times have you in a moment not wanted to leave it, wanted it to last forever, knowing it won't? Even if we had the superhero ability to pause time, if you pause that moment of euphoria, peace, stillness, and happiness forever, you would never move. You would never move forward. Letting go means not bringing old energy from past chapters into your new one. You have to make space for the new to enter. You have to clear the path for the new to walk alongside you. Letting go allows us to look back on the past and smile, no matter what emotions it stirs up, thanking the experiences and the people who shaped us into who we are today and who we continue to become. So until next time, remember, you have the power inside you. We all do. You have the power to get back up.